Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Healing Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Chandler, and I am so thrilled you are here. As a reminder, we have coined this month November. That's K-N-O-W, Vember, because as the world around us starts to get a bit more chaotic with this November astrological energy, the Mercury retrograde, it can often be distracting and a bit uncertain, especially if you're finding the pace of life picking up a little bit. And as we talked about in our retrograde episode, the first week of November, this month is really an invitation to go inward, to trust what we all already know. Today's conversation feels especially aligned with that. I'm sitting down with Sarah Hardie Johnson, an inspiring healing heroine that many of you might remember from our earlier episode on psychic mediumship with hero Lee Morgan, where we explored what it means to connect with spirit and the unseen. This will be my first ever one-on-one interview with one of our healing heroines so that our listeners can learn more about her journey beyond even just the psychic mediumship practice that she found with Hero Lee that forever altered the path that she was on in her own life. This time, it's just the two of us. Two women, two mothers, two corporate professionals turned spiritual seekers, talking about intuition, slowing down, and the healing that happens when we finally create space to listen. We'll explore how our nervous system impacts our ability to receive intuitive guidance, the various ways we can tap into it as a resource, how dreams in particular, especially visitation dreams, which we touched on last time, can become portals to deeper knowing, and why sometimes the most loving thing we can do is just rest, cry, get quiet with ourselves, and feel it all. So wherever you are right now, if you're walking or you're driving, maybe even curled up with a cup of tea, as I hope you are, take a deep breath, soften your shoulders, let them drop from your ears, and just settle in. Let this conversation remind you that you already have all of the answers you need inside you. You just have to make space to hear them again. With that, before we dive into Sarah's story, let me share a little bit more about her background for those who missed our last episode together. Sarah Hardie Johnson has had a successful career in software sales for the last 15 years and currently resides in Atlanta with her husband and two young children. Outside of her corporate career, she is also a trained yoga instructor and a transcendental meditation enthusiast on the path to becoming a spiritual coach, death doula, sound healer, and Reiki practitioner. Sarah's passion is guiding others to live with less fear of the end so they can embrace the fullness of life in the present moment. Sarah, welcome back to the show today. I am so excited to have you back for a part 2 of our conversation with Hero Lee.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Chandler. I love everything you just said. I'm so into it.
I mean, me too. I feel like before we hit record, guys, she and I were going off on all sorts of tangents. I truly feel like I could sit and just talk to you all afternoon. So my job today is to try to keep us focused on the various ways that our listeners can tap into that intuition. As many of you know, I did release a solo episode earlier this month where I talk about why tapping into that intuition is so important, how it can transform your life, and how you know when your intuition is speaking to you. So I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode, because I do think it's great context for what Sarah and I are about to dive into in terms of some, again, practical, tangible ways that you can really start going inward and listening to yourself again, and being aware of the signs that you might be getting from outside supporters as well, in the form of spiritual guides, angels, and others. So, Sarah, as we always do, let's start with a nice, easy warm-up question before we get going. Sarah, have you learned anything new since we last connected that you think our listeners would find valuable or helpful in their own journeys?
Yeah, for me, it's more of like a confirmation or like a reconfirming or validating what we already know, which is we're really being asked to trust in God, trust in love, not fuel the fear fire. That has been just like the resounding theme the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks since we spoke, is just soften and surrender to this divine plan that's unfolding. It's like we have the choice every day to walk in faith and belief in ourselves and God and this higher power, or we can fuel the doubts and the fear, right? And it's like, for me, just time and time again of coming back to that grounded place of trust and of love, leading with love. That's really been the continuing lesson that I hear, just feels like every day these days.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And I think it's really important. We do talk about that a lot on the show. And I think, it can be so hard for especially busy women who are juggling a lot, who are navigating the stressors of everyday life, and especially mothers. I think I hear all the time that once you become a mom, your anxiety starts to spike. And, I've heard anxiety is described as worry about an uncertain future. And learning to trust, as you're saying, is the antidote to that. Like really learning to trust something bigger than yourself, and that you are being loved, held, and guided. So I think some of what we're going to talk about today will hopefully help people tap into that kind of trust, so that maybe they can sort of relinquish their grasp and need for control and worry and concern. I think that's really, really important.
A friend of mine and I talk about, like, are you white knuckling through life? Are you holding on super tight, or can you soften the grip a little bit? And yeah, anxiety is just the illusion of separation or of separateness. So
Yeah.
it's like, if you remember that we're all part of the same thing, and that, we have God and love inside of us, and that's like the guiding light that really should be what we're focused on. As simple as it sounds, right? It's not, but I think that that's just what we're constantly being asked, is to remember this.
Yeah. And I would just say in summary that if you feel like you want to lean into that trust but don't know how, I think getting spiritual is the fastest way to get there. And that doesn't mean being religious.
Totally.
For some, it might mean getting religious, but like a lot of what we're talking about today are ways to tap into that spirituality if you are not part of a specific denomination or don't want to go to temple or church, right? Like these are ways to feel like you are connected to something bigger without having to change your beliefs, frameworks, structures to fit something that doesn't feel authentic to you.
Totally. Well, and we are spiritual beings, right? That are having a physical experience. That's what the saying is. So it's like, in every day and every aspect of your life, there can be a spiritual moment. Like everything can be spiritual if you slow down and stop and notice, right? So that's the magic, is it's not only in churches or in, temples or wherever. So that's, I think, what we really will hone in on this episode, is how do we cultivate that spiritual experience throughout every day?
I could think of no better intro for what we're about to dive deep into. So thank you for that, Sarah. And I'm going to ask because I know many of our listeners may not have caught our first episode together. So, for those who are meeting you for the first time, can you share a little bit about your journey and what led you to recognize your intuitive and spiritual curiosity?
Yeah, definitely. So, May of 2019 was a bit of a defining moment for my life thus far. I got married in January of that year. And 4 months later, we went on our honeymoon. We were lucky enough where my parents met us on the second half of our honeymoon in Italy, along with my sister and her husband. And it was the most wonderful week ever. I mean, we are, right, a happy family, but we were just soaking up the marrow of life. We were, dancing and laughing and enjoying great food and just really appreciating all that life has to offer together. And we get back, and this was Mother's Day. So May 12th, that Sunday, my dad went to sleep the night before and just didn't wake up. And my mom called me. I was the first one to be called because my sister was actually still in Italy. And this is just a massive shock to the system, right? It's just the biggest, I don't know, surprise you could probably ever imagine. And for me, I was raised Presbyterian. I would say I still identify as a Christian, but it wasn't something that was like super passionate for me at all. I just hadn't, had that deep faith prior to that time. But as part of the grieving process, a couple of days after he passed, one of our pastors was at our house and he said, I have complete confidence that we will see your dad again one day. And for me, that was like the first moment where I was like, I have hope. If this is true, I'm going to be okay. And so I kind of clung onto that of this spiritual quest that it kind of ended up evolving into. And I was doing as much research as I could just, on the afterlife and what happens with death and near death experiences, just consuming as much as I possibly could get my hands on. And various things came up, right? I did yoga teacher training, which was kind of the first spiritual step for me, which was amazing. I have done meditation, deep dive kind of workshops and still practice meditation every day or as much as I can. And then I also stumbled upon Lee, our favorite psychic medium. And that was definitely a life-changing experience, for me, a confirmation of our loved ones are not gone. We're still able to hear from them. Definitely a confirmation that we will be with them again one day, but that we can also connect with them while we're here. And that there's something much larger happening that we can't see, which just brings me all of the warm and fuzzies to know that there's a higher power, there's things that are being orchestrated on our behalf that we can't see. And when we look back, we understand it all together. But when you're going through it, you have to have that immense trust, that faith. So that's a little bit about my story and what's brought us to here. And I hope it helps.
It does. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. And I know the last time you and I spoke on the show with Lee, we dove very deep into psychic mediumship. Would you say it's fair to assume that that was the most impactful part of your path to heal?
I would say that mediumship is tied with meditation. So I would say my experiences with Lee opened the door to all of the other practices that are extremely impactful for me on a daily basis. And I was seeing Lee before I did the meditation, and her encouragement of, all of that clarity, all of that knowing comes through meditation. I don't have to engage with Lee in order to connect with my dad or my higher self or God, which everyone should know. So yeah, it's definitely, those are both super meaningful things for me, but yeah, it's a tie.
What was it about the meditation in particular, Sarah, that you found so powerful outside of what you just shared in terms of the best way to connect with something higher than you? Like, I don't know, I'm curious because we talk a lot about meditation on the show and how hard it can be for women to quiet their minds and actually achieve that state of meditation. And I do meditate, but I don't know that I've ever done a meditation longer than like 10 or 15 minutes if I'm by myself, just like quietly sitting. I've done like sound bath meditations, and I guess, acupuncture in a way can be thought of as a meditation. So like I've done somatic therapies that involve meditation. Yoga, another example. You do a yoga class for an hour following your breath. That is a meditation. But like in terms of just sitting on my couch and either doing a guided meditation or sitting in total silence, like I don't know that I've done that for longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah. And imagine like getting to a place of peace and losing track of time, and you look up and it's been 30 minutes and you've been just in this, we call it bliss. And also I think the connotation of bliss is sort of confusing because you're like, bliss is like ecstasy. It's not. It's a state of contentment. It's a state of peace. Like you're full, you're connected to the divine, if you want to say that. You're in pure consciousness. So it's extremely peaceful and calming, but you're content. It's not some like ecstatic state. So I think I wanted to kind of like clear that for people. But yeah, Chandler, I encourage you to meditate on your own. And I can talk about how transcendental meditation works because that's what I practice and that's what I know. It's not the whole idea is that it's natural and it's effortless. It's not something that really needs to be practiced. You kind of just need to trust yourself. For me, it's empowering because I have this tool that I can use to effectively control my mind. And, control is like a funny word, right? You're letting go, you're relaxing. That's really what you're doing. So there's actually the opposite of control. And it's empowering to know that we can do this on our own without the help of anyone. And as long as you prioritize the time and make it a part of your schedule, you can do it and you can be good at it. So that's what's been the biggest thing for me is not only the, ability to create space and receive and connect with the higher power from that, but that I have the confidence in myself that I, again, have this kind of like power over my own mind, like I'm not going to be controlled by my thoughts or my mind because I know that they're not me,
Mm-hmm.
So that's what meditation has taught me.
That's very cool. And I know meditation has been a huge part of your journey because we talked about that from the outset when you and I first met. I know you do transcendental meditation, which you touched on last time and how that differs from regular meditation. I would love for you to share that again, just for our listeners so that they understand. But to piggyback on that, is it okay to start with just basic meditation? Is guided meditation okay? Like, how do you recommend women who don't meditate dip their toe in and start this process?
Totally. I think that any form of meditation is great, right? Like start any way you want. To me, I felt that the guided meditation early on in my journey was a little bit distracting. And so what I would encourage is for folks who've never done it before or who are just trying to establish something, try sitting in silence, kind of settling down, meaning you're trying to relax your body part by part and return to your breath. Just see if you can listen to your breathing for 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. And if that makes you uncomfortable or maybe nervous, remind yourself that breathing, like I'm alive, I'm breathing, and this is a good thing, right? My breath may be shallow. That's okay. My breath may be slow or jagged. It's all okay. Like those two kind of lessons of you don't need to judge how it is. You're just, observing your breath and you're just sitting. Those are like the real secrets or like the major lessons of meditation. So if you can just start with 2 minutes of listening to your breath and getting comfortable sitting in silence, that you don't need someone else to say, and now we relax our shoulders. If that helps you, then great. But that would be where I would start.
Okay. That's, I think, a really good tip. And that'll help you for some of the other practices we talk about on the show also. I mean, yoga was a great example, and you being a yoga instructor will understand, like my first few times in a yoga studio, I'm just trying to move my body to keep up with everyone else in the room. I was so focused on like doing the right thing. And over time, as I got more comfortable in the space and got more comfortable with my practice and realized it was about me and nobody else, I started to really push myself to move with my breath and let that be the most important thing, not how I looked doing it. And that was really transformative in how I practice. Like now I feel my nervous system calming as soon as I start a flow, any sort of flow. And it's not perfect, but it's become more of the North Star than like, do I look as strong or am I as low as this woman on my right? Like
Totally.
it's so hard to
And we
get
all
yourself
go
out of
through that. We all go through
comparison
that
place.
same evolution of, when you first start doing it, you're self-conscious because you're like, I don't even know the names of these things. What are they saying? And, this person to my right is breathing super loud. That's kind of weird. I'm now that person, Chandler, who breathes really loud. I'm the one who like sighs in my breath because it feels so good. And, it's such a judgment-free zone that if you do yoga enough, you're like, okay, literally no one cares. Everyone is here to chill out and get what they need from this. They're not, and if they are thinking about who's the most flexible, because by the way, I'm like the least flexible person who's been doing yoga for a long time, then that's, their issue. But my just validating that everybody goes through that same evolution of like, oh, am I doing it right? I'm self-conscious, So similarly with meditation, like it's such a personal practice. That's what the beauty is. Like when you come to yourself in yoga and you can kind of like focus on within, like I try to close my eyes a lot because then I'm not distracted by what other people are doing. You can really feel your body. Same with meditation.
And I know you, Sarah, love transcendental meditation. Like that was the meditation that stuck for you. Can you talk about that a little bit and how it's different from regular meditation for listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So the first piece is that there are locations in most cities and like in-person locations where they have teachers. So you can go in person, you get trained. They do this beautiful little ceremony to kind of like, it's not religious by any means. It's in Sanskrit. And they're effectively invoking kind of like the past creators of meditation and the yogis to kind of be there and help you, which I loved. But you ask, am I doing this right? You do it together with your teacher, and then you get access to this app, which effectively is a timer. So there's no one leading you. It's just a timer. You have all of the wisdom inside of yourself that you need. And then you do have access to resources within the app. So if you ever need to remember, okay, what does good look like? Like, how am I supposed to be doing this? The most important thing is that you're not trying. It's natural. And so what I mean by that is the more you can relax and sit, and then you effortlessly turn your attention to your mantra, which is just a sound. It doesn't mean anything. It's effectively the vehicle for which your mind will kind of dive deep beneath thought. So they have this whole kind of like consciousness concept, right? Which is pure consciousness is at the bottom of the ocean where there's basically no thought. You're connecting with God there. That's what people would say.
Okay.
So we come from pure consciousness that's as calm as the bottom of the ocean. We live and operate on the top of the ocean where the waves are, right? So those are the thoughts. Those are all the action. There's a lot of action at the top because that's where we are when we're awake. So the mantra is the vehicle which helps you to your mind focus and dive beneath the thoughts that you have, which are very normal to have during meditation. So it's effectively kind of like you focus on the mantra, it takes you down into quiet. You enjoy that for as long as you get it. Then a thought might bring you back up. Then you focus on the mantra again and you go back down to peace and quiet. And eventually, depending on the day, I've been doing this for a couple years. There are days where I don't feel much of the quiet. And then there are days where it's all quiet for 25 minutes or 30 minutes and I've lost track of time. And you come out of it and you're like, wow, that was super special. I feel amazing. I feel rested and fresh and calm. But the biggest thing is to have very little expectation, which I think is so good for just like life practice. It's like, can you try to loosen up the expectation and the control? And it's such a good reminder just that, and the goal is to do it twice a day, right? So in the morning before breakfast and then in the afternoon before dinner. Mine is not perfect by any means. I try to get it in whenever I can with, 2 young kids and a job and all of that. But yeah, they come at it from like a not only mental, physical, but also scientific perspective. So, if you're doing it right, they'll say physically, you might start to feel numbness. You might experience some muscle twitching, which is what I experience every time I start to relax is my forearm starts to twitch, which is like, okay, you're doing it. Good job. Your breath may be shallow or soft and you may forget your surroundings. Those are all, not all of them have to be happening at the same time, but like one of those is a sign that you're doing it. Another one mentally would be that you're able to think of the mantra effortlessly, that it becomes kind of like soft and or sort of distorted. So like you're thinking of this word, but it might sound long and quiet, or it might sound, do you know what I mean? You have quietness and peace. That's another sign that you're, doing it right. So I love it because again, I've been able to observe thoughts that, number one, we don't have to attach to every thought that we receive. Mm-hmm. Number two, we are not our thoughts. So this just helps with, the ability, like I mentioned, to control your mind. It's like you can have thoughts come and go and know that they'll always be sort of like bubbling up. Some of them are great ideas and some of them are worst case scenario anxiety, So it's all part of the process, I think, of getting to know yourself.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. You're making me very curious about this practice and wanting to try it. And I love the metaphor that you offered about the ocean. I think that's really helpful to understand what's happening when you select a mantra and the role of the mantra in getting you down to the bottom of the ocean, which is so peaceful. I would love to live in that every single day. And,
right?
I think we're often getting pulled out of that. But I think achieving that in the first place, even if you can live in that for a minute or two, it's like, you can experience it. So you can always get back there.
Totally. That's what I'm saying is if you, Chandler, were ever to have that meditation, that quiet moment, and you have this fullness, it's hard to describe too, kind of like fullness in your belly where you're like, I know I'm connected to something that's bigger than me when I'm in this quiet space. That's kind of the confirmation of, like you're doing it right. So once you do that, for me, it was addicting. I was like, this is a non-negotiable. I can't not do this, and try.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to dabble in this maybe with your counsel, Sarah.
Totally. Happy to help you.
I'm curious, as we talk about obviously intuition throughout the month of November, what does that word mean to you today? Has that definition changed over time at all?
Yeah, intuition has a lot to do with just trust, because for me, if you're receiving intuition, like that gut sense of knowing, you can't rationalize it away. You're doing the opposite of trusting if you rationalize it away, if that makes sense. So the emphasis for me on that intuition is trusting, even though it may sound out there, just trusting my authentic self and trusting the authentic higher power that I know is there.
Love that. I think that's absolutely right, as we have been talking about intuition this month and being who you truly are. It's like your truth at your core. And we even talk about that trust and why it's so hard to trust it sometimes, because as you and I both know, especially, trusting your intuition is not often the path of least resistance. Usually it's the hard thing to do, right? It's the thing that takes you outside your comfort zone or that goes against the grain. And I think that's what makes it so hard to listen to it, to tap into it, and like what you're saying, to trust it. So I appreciate your perspective on that, especially given all the work you've done.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it typically keeps coming back, right? So if you're not going to miss it, is what I'm trying to say. If you are cultivating that space, which we can talk about next, you're not typically going to miss, that divine plan or that intuition or that knowing that's meant for you, because it will keep coming back and kind of knocking on your door or whispering or pulling at your heartstrings. So I love all of that.
1,000% cosign. Sarah, changing gears a little bit. In our last episode, you and I started talking about the power of dreams. And specifically, you referenced a dream that you had about your father that you later learned from Hero Lee was a visitation dream. Can you tell our listeners more about that experience and what it was like for you?
Yes. So I will just set the context by saying that I've only had one of these dreams, and it very clearly stands out from all of the other, I would say, regular dreams that I've ever had, which is, your brain kind of processing whatever's going on, whether you're stressed out or having a life change or whatever it might be. Like, I know what those dreams are like. This dream was extremely different from all of those. It was August 2019, so 3 months after he passed. I can't remember if I specifically asked for a sign from him. I feel like I might have, though. I might have said, hey, I would love a sign from you, Dad, to know that you're okay. Something like that. It was early in the morning. I think it was sometime between maybe 6 and 7 a.m. that I had this dream. So I knew I was dreaming, like I was asleep. But in the dream, I knew that he had passed, and it felt just so real. Like we were real people hugging in a dream. So I'll just tell you. So the setting is, and remember, we were in Italy the week before he passed. So the setting was kind of like a backdrop of Italy, but we had water. I think it was like knee high water, maybe somewhere between knee or hip height water, and lots of light. Very, I would just say ethereal. Like it was, I'm not sure if it was heaven, but it felt very, angelic in nature. And he's walking towards me in the dream, and I'm walking towards him. I knew he had passed away. He is smiling, the biggest smile ever. And we hugged, and he's laughing and smiling the whole entire time of the dream. And I think I was asking questions like, are you okay? And why are you always laughing? And he's just like, he doesn't say any words, but it was like this very clear knowing that he is great. Like he was good. Like he was definitely more than okay. We're hugging, and I woke up with the weight of his hug. So, a hug where you can feel their embrace, like you can feel the physical weight of that person, pressing against you. That's what I woke up with, was like the physical weight of that hug. And then of course, tears just streaming down my face of like such an emotional, and for me, it was like confirmation that he's okay, that he's more than okay, right? And that we're all like, it's all going to be okay. Like it was like such closure. So since then, when we did the podcast with Lee, she said, this was a visitation. I had never heard that before. So then I look it up, and there's like, 7 traits of what a visitation is. And this checks pretty much all of those boxes. I mean, there wasn't some like, yeah. So it says, the deceased appear healthy and vibrant. That would be one. I mean, he was like, probably 10 years younger than when he passed. So 50 and perfectly healthy and vibrant. It feels super real. It's very vivid. So definitely those. You get a sensation of comfort. The dreamer awakens with intense emotion. And the deceased communicates telepathically to the person. And then the one that mine, I don't think had this massive message, but it says sometimes they're bringing a message to you. I mean, my message must have been, it's all okay. So that's, I guess, a big enough message. But yeah, it was, I remember I woke up and I wrote it down, and you just don't forget those kinds of dreams. Since then, I was watching a documentary where someone talks about a similar dream where they were like, this person passed away. They came and they were laughing and smiling the whole time. And, it was like some murder mystery documentary on Netflix. And they asked, did so-and-so commit the crime? And all they did was laugh and smile. So there was like a knowing of like, everything's okay, but I'm not going to answer your, human questions that are going to like solve the mystery. So for me, that was confirmation that this was a thing. And I think a lot of people have actually experienced this with loved ones.
Yeah, no, I had heard of it before too, actually, even before Lee brought it up on some of our episodes together. I knew it was a thing, probably because I used to watch a lot of those like unsolved mysteries and like I've always been fascinated by this space, the spiritual realm, and anytime humans interact with spirit in that way, I wanted to know those stories. And I feel like I had heard a lot of moments of visitation dreams from others who were interviewed about it. But it's so cool to hear that you got to experience that at a time where you really needed it. And as in response to a question that you had asked or a sign that you were looking for, I think makes it especially meaningful. So,
Yeah, I feel super grateful to have that experience. Like, so special.
yeah, it really sounds it. And, I know neither of us are dream experts, but I'm curious how you personally see dreams as invitations to maybe go inward or connect with something beyond the rational mind. Because I'm curious because I'm asking this. I am a believer that dreams are just another tool for us to use and pay attention to when I think our intuition is trying to tell us something.
Totally. I completely agree with that. I think if you're moving super quickly in life and your intuition or your higher self is trying to kind of like tug on you to say, hey, listen to me. I have something to say. And you're not slowing down in your waking life, then yeah, I'm sure that message is going to come through in a dream of some sort. I mean, for me personally, in times of transition, I typically have like stress dreams, which are just like these wild dreams that are like, you wake up and you're like maybe sweating from that. But it's like your brain is trying to process what's happening and kind of like put it all in a certain order and just make sense of it. So I personally don't look into my dreams as much, but I think that if your intuition is trying to tell you something and you're not slowing down during the day to receive that message, I think a dream is completely reasonable for that to come through.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's totally fair. I mean, I've just loved those really clear dreams which feel like, when you wake up and you can tell a story of exactly what happened, everything was so visual. I remember I was like, God, I must have been, we went on a family trip when I was younger to New Mexico, and we were in this bookstore, and I found this beautiful red dream book that I purchased. And I mean, I must have been, gosh, like 12 years old, 13 years old. And I've kept it my whole life next to my bed because when I wake up and I want to know what it meant, I always turn to this like dictionary of signs, symbols that you see in dreams and what they mean. But recently, to your point of being in a time of transition, as I feel like I've certainly been this fall, I've had two dreams recently, very recently, where I woke up in a physical state of stress. Like my anxiety was through the roof, my heart was pounding, my palms were sweaty. The dream was so visual that I had to do like just some quick breath work in bed in the morning to like calm my nervous system before I took on the day. And I remember, and this is a good tip for listeners, I actually went to ChatGPT because they were so intricate, these dreams. I knew my dream book was not going to cut it. So I went to ChatGPT and I told the whole story of everything that happened. And I said, analyze this for me. And it was wild. I was like, okay, so that's what this symbol meant, or this experience, or this person showing up the way they showed up. And it was so relevant to the period I was in. And it was like, okay, this is just another way that I think my intuition is trying to reinforce a lesson I need to learn right now. And I hadn't used dreams in that way until I woke up in a state where I felt like it was more meaningful and worth exploring and getting curious about. So that is just my plug to listeners. If you've got that kind of dream where your physical state is altered, like that is likely something to pay attention to. And ChatGPT can be your friend in these instances. It's a great resource to interpret those types of experiences and moments and see if there's something else under the surface that your life is trying to tell you.
And how great that it helped you make sense of it. It's like that's what we all want is just to have everything make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was sort of in alignment with a lot of the other messages I had been getting from other channels, whether it was like Lee or checking my horoscope or, a conversation with my therapist, right? Like so many other, if the message is just slow down, like stop doing all the time, like don't force anything. It's like I know that, but I needed something deeper in me to click into place and say, okay, no, really, just be for a minute. And it was just powerful.
I think that's like a continuous thing that we will keep hearing as like, if you want to call us high achievers or type A or whatever it might be, is like people who are used to kind of getting a lot done and moving quickly. It's like we're always going to need that reminder to slow down and
Mm-hmm.
and do less. Like doing more is not always the best thing. And I think that's just certainly my consistent reminder is like, slow down. You don't have to get it all done today.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, Sarah. You've said before that, or actually, I don't know that we've touched on this yet, but when you and I met, Sarah, to talk about this call in particular, you mentioned to me that intuition can't land when we're in fight or flight. And I hadn't thought about that previously, but I love that you brought that up because I think there's definitely a lot there. What does it look like in your life to slow down enough to receive?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say is that I think it can land, I've heard of people and I've certainly had this like a dark night of the soul where you hear, God or whoever talking to you and giving you this clear cut message. I think that that's a thing. But what I've learned is that I don't have to be dysregulated. Like I can be regulated and actually be in a better place to understand what's happening in a clearer way. So for me, it's taking little moments throughout the day, whereas before I would work and just like grind it out and just push through. Now it's like taking little moments where I can in between meetings or certainly before I go pick my kids up to reset and make sure like, okay, am I holding like tons of tension right now? Do I feel like I'm at a 10 mentally? Like, can I come and calm down for a minute? That has been sort of like the overarching, theme of like just check in with yourself, and feel your body of like, where are you holding on to tension again? So lately I've really enjoyed I have a PEMF mat, a pulsing electromagnetic frequency mat that I lay on, and I will listen to spiritual frequencies. So you can literally look up on Spotify spiritual frequency playlist. And for me, the sound healing just like immediately puts me in this, rest and digest state of like relaxation and calm. Taking a couple deep breaths like that really helps me just to come down from, again, I call it, I'm at a 10 because I'm like on a work call and just, high functioning and stressed and making sure that we cover all the points, So making sure that I come down from that numerous times throughout the day before I go pick up the kids and then wind down for bed for me is crucial so that I can be my best self as a mom and a wife and, all of the things.
I love that you mentioned sound healing here because I found that to be really effective too. And I love that you have a PEMF mat to do that alone. Yeah. You don't have to go to some formal bath, which I think is great. And you did mention on our last episode also that there are Hertz frequencies you can kind of download on Spotify in between your sound healings if you do that locally in your area. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really, really fun and creative way for people to tap into that kind of piece in the in-between. Do you have other favorite ways that you like to calm your nervous system if you don't have access to your mat or, aren't able to listen to Spotify in that moment? What are some of the other tips and tricks you would give our listeners?
Going on a short walk, like going on a 5-minute walk, stepping outside, even just in the sunlight, if it's sunny that day for 2 minutes. This is kind of one where I think you've had an episode on breath work, but cyclical sighing. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, share.
It's supposed
please.
To be the most effective for if you're in overwhelm, it's supposed to be the most effective to get your nervous system just in a state of relaxation. So basically you take a deep breath in through your nose and then you bring one more in. And then you sigh out with an audible sigh. And you do that a few times, maybe 2 minutes, and you can't help but physically relax.
Cool.
So cyclical sighing, I love that one. I love getting a foot massage. This is where you're,
Great one.
Yeah, you're going out to get that. But like they have this place called Treat Your Feet in Atlanta or Soul Spa. It's very inexpensive. For 60 minutes, you get some pressure point massage on your foot, put on a little Spotify, yoga playlist, whatever. And I can decompress from anything I've gone through that week. So yeah, I think that for me, it's like kind of like a recipe of all these different tools. It's like At the end of the day, it's really important for us to get to know ourselves, which is why emphasis on slowing down so that you can feel your feelings or hear whatever you need to hear so that you know yourself. Like, okay, in this moment, breath work actually sounds awesome. Or in this moment, I'd love to just stretch and listen to, a playlist so I can like release some tension. It's like each person's body and needs are unique in that moment. And it's like if you can have kind of a lineup of stuff to turn to, it's so helpful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And you talk about a lot of these tools helping you decompress. And you and I both have talked about how, even you've said before, letting yourself feel is part of that healing, not something to avoid. I'm curious how that's looked for you as you begin to employ some of these practices. What's maybe a ritual or practice that's helped you feel to heal? And, what does that look like?
Yeah. A big lesson for me is, yes, like leaning into feelings. So, whereas historically I would, probably shove something under the rug and maybe not, feel grief or even let myself cry. It's actually a prayer that I've had lately is like, God, please help me to release the energy that I don't need. Right. So in that moment or soon after, like, let me cry, like, let me just let it go. So yeah, making space for a good cry is so cathartic and so, healing for me. I read something that said tears wash the soul. And so every time I have a good cry, which I try to cry probably once every 2 weeks, if not more often, I feel like renewed. I feel like that's the kind of the mental connotation I have with crying now is like, oh, I feel like fresh, renewed soul, like I got out what I needed so that I can make space to feel more joy, so that I can feel the good stuff even more. Because if you disassociate and run from grief that you might be running from, it's like you're not really feeling all the other good stuff too, in my opinion, right? Like you're kind of just like, yeah, putting on a mask and running. So slowing down to really feel my feelings, which have been a combination of grief and moments. So again, crying, journaling, all of those things, prayer, but then also anxiety and stress. Like, again, for fast moving folks, whether it's women or men and mothers, like stress accumulates, and for me, it shows up in sleep. Like I'm very a light sleeper. And so I will quickly not sleep well if I have some pent up stress or anxiety. And so a mantra that's really helped me is it's totally okay to feel anxiety in your body. Our bodies are built to handle stress. Like obviously we don't want it to be chronic, but it's good for your body to feel a little bit of turbulence, right? Like it's good for it to have to balance itself out. But the biggest piece that makes it go faster is if you don't fight it. If you just, say, it's okay to feel stress. It's okay to feel anxiety in this moment. Like, let me just feel it for a minute. And the fastest way is through, so if you feel it, then it gets out. And then I use all of these different modalities that we've talked about. Sound healing is huge to just like release emotional blockages, like whether that's stress or grief. Like I'm trying to let everything flow through. We talked about acupuncture. I love acupuncture for releasing anything that feels maybe blocked.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I really try to do acupuncture regularly because I think it's a great way to just move energy through your body. It's a great way.
I do it probably monthly, if not more often.
Sarah, if you could share one message with every woman who is hearing you today and trying to reconnect with her intuition this November, what would you say to her right now?
I would say that the human experience is feeling all the feelings. Like that's why we're here, is to be in touch with our emotions, to not let them have control over us, but to use them as like a soft guide, bringing us back into our body, right? Like we don't want to be too much in our heads. We want to be in our body, in our hearts, kind of like with an open heart, again, focused on love. So to me, getting back into your body and trusting all of it, that the feelings are part of the human experience and that it's totally okay to have various feelings, it just helps me to get more grounded in my intuition and then receive what I need to receive and trust. So that's probably the biggest piece for me right now.
I think that's great advice. Great advice. Finally, Sarah, how can our listeners connect with you and your work going forward now that you are starting to really take hold of this new spiritual side and bring it to others?
I love it. I have an Instagram called Breathe and Believe Her. So that's really my forum now, where I'm just kind of putting out what I receive, and it comes through meditation or walks, is like, what is my inspiration? What's the truest thing that I know right now that I'm not sharing enough of? That's kind of what I try to put out there. But eventually I'll have a website, and, eventually I'll be taking on clients for spiritual coaching. But yeah, right now it's Instagram, and, I'd love to connect with anybody who's interested and, bring comfort and peace. That's really the goal for everything.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Sarah, so much for being here. We will definitely put your Instagram handle in our show notes and resources for listeners today. But I just really loved this part 2 of our conversation that allowed us to go even deeper than just psychic mediumship alone, which I know was such a critical part of your journey. So thank you for coming back to talk more about your experiences, what has helped you, and how listeners can think about tapping into their own intuition going forward.
Thank you so much, Chandler. It's such a privilege. I love spending the time with you. So thank you so much.
Right back at you. We still have so much to talk about, so many phone calls in our future, but thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it. And if you felt something resonate today, take that as a sign that your own intuition might be waking up and be asking to be heard. And if you're loving this November theme, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss next week's episode as we continue exploring what it means to know, trust, and return home to yourself with Hero Kate as she does a tarot reading for all of you heading into 2026. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with someone who could use a little light. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to meet our heroes, subscribe to our monthly newsletter, and share ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.